Hello everyone, Corey Mitchell here with TradeThatSwing.com, and this is your current swing trading stock watch list update for August 29th. I am updating this list. Current market conditions, health indicators were weak, but we did have a strong pop today, August 29th. So if the indices continue to push higher, and we're seeing a lot of stocks push up as we will see in the watch list, that's going to turn favorable. That's going to turn those health indicators favorable very quickly. So I am on the lookout. Might not be taking any trades in the next day or two, but probably by the end of the week or early next week. Definitely looking. And we're looking for contractions, cup and handles, rounded bottoms, those types of patterns. And pretty much all of them rounded bottoms right now. Now, some of these could be viewed as a contraction pattern, but I thought they felt a little bit more like a rounded bottom. And rounded bottoms give you that extra entry. And I'll talk about that in the sense that you get the pop up. Once the contraction pattern, once it pops, it's gone. Our entry's gone. But with the rounded bottom, you can look for trading the next pullback. And so a lot of these stocks have popped up recently because we had the big move up today, August 29th. And so a lot of them have popped. So we can wait for that little pullback and get in on a rounded bottom pattern. So I've labeled almost all of these as rounded bottom patterns. And let's just start going through them. And someone asked me to do this again. I used to do these all the time, and just to help them out with seeing some of the patterns. So we have a rounded bottom here. Some of these, actually most of these on the list are pretty brief in the sense that usually I like to see 3 drops or more. So this pattern kind of forming out over a longer period of time, more like this, where we start to see this like real slowing down and then this building to the upside. But unfortunately, we're probably not going to get that this time if we start moving up. We had a brief pullback in the indices, strong overall momentum. If we just pull up SPY for a second, we've had this brief pullback, but overall we've had this nice strong uptrend. So this has been fairly short-lived since the start of August, which means a lot of our pullback patterns, if we continue going up, are going to be less than a month. And so we just have to sort of adapt to that, even though our ideal pattern might be a month or more. If we start seeing patterns that are breaking higher after 3 weeks, then this is probably the pattern we're going to get. So we have 2 drops, still good to see this first drop, then a nice smaller drop, and we've started to push above. So this was our push above a recent swing high. We had a little pullback here, so we actually could have had an entry right here in the last couple days. Wasn't taking trades, and I am not taking trades quite yet. So likely we are going to have to wait for, it'll maybe move up a little bit. And then we wait for the next pullback. And that's what I like about the rounded bottom, is that as this price progresses upwards, we can have multiple entries as these unfold. Very similar pattern here. First drop, then we had a second drop, then we started moving up, and you can see we're starting to make some higher swing highs. So we see this slight transition from moving lower to starting to move up. And if we connect the highs, we see the same thing, starting to move up. And again, same thing. Doesn't matter if this continues to push up, great. And then we're looking for a pullback kind of back into this area again. So the rounded bottom, a brief one, but something worth looking into. Helix Energy, another rounded bottom, drop, push higher. This one made a slightly higher high, but then we can see it drops, can't really go anywhere, has a little push up, drops again, higher swing low, and we're pushing up. So I would be waiting for the next pullback. Again, if it runs way up, then I'm not interested anymore. But if we're in this area and then we pull back sort of into this pattern, then that's a good trade. If we draw our lines, a lot of times it'll pull back into this arc area, HLX. What was the next one on the list? LI. All of these very similar looking patterns. This one a little bit more of a drop, but you can see the drop, push up, the next drop cannot really go anywhere. It doesn't make any headway to the downside. That shows slowing selling momentum. So you have this first drop, pullback, bigger, about the same size drop, and then this next drop smaller. Can't make headway to the downside. So if you connected these lows to that one, you see this leveling off effect. And then, of course, we need a higher swing low. So we've started to push up, making higher highs here. And I'll just delete this one to clear it up for a second. And if we push up a little bit, or even if we stay around this area and then pull back, we have our rounded bottom pattern, right? Higher lows, higher highs, transitioning from lower lows, lower highs. The only thing I don't like about LI, and whenever this has come up on the list before, I've noted it, you have daily gaps. This is a foreign company, so you tend to have lots of these little daily gaps, which can just increase your risk or increase your stop loss a little bit. Of course, if it gaps in your favor, it can also increase your profits, maybe a little bit more than expected, but just something to keep in mind. Gappy stocks, I'm not the biggest fan of, but we are starting to see this one set up. Rover Group, same thing, big pop up. We started to see this sell. This was a little bit deeper pullback. Then we had the push up, and then we see a small drop, and again, just that transition from lower lows moving up into higher lows and higher highs. Right, see that transition starting to move up. So again, we've had the pullback. This is a possible entry here. Conditions still not ideal in the stock market, so could change very quickly, but I'd give this maybe a little bit of time. If conditions were good, could be taking an entry right here, but I'd probably prefer to see if this pushes up and then enter on the next pullback. Again, most of these brief, just a couple of drops. This one a little bit more what I would call acceleration into the downside. And again, this is my first view. I put these on the list. I go through the scan list once, and then some of these would get eliminated. So this one, a little bit gappy. And we also had this first drop. I'm just going to measure this out. Ideally, I want to see slowing selling momentum. So this first drop was about, let's call it just under 10%. And this one just over 10%. So pretty close. And we're starting to see this shift up. It's just barely shifted up. So with the gappiness and all that, maybe I would just leave this one. Because we haven't really seen that like some of the other ones we saw. We have a drop, the push up, and then a smaller drop that shows that slowing selling momentum. Here, the selling momentum was about the same as it was here. So this one, maybe I'd end up crossing it out. Especially because of the gappiness. So it's an okay setup. You know, we are reclaiming this swing high here, consolidating. Could get the push up. So it's not a horrible pattern, but we do have a lot to choose from again. So these are kind of some of the finer details that we look at in deciding whether we want to take this trade or not. So this one would probably get put on the back burner for me compared to some of the others. This one, a little bit clustered up in the sense that we don't have very clear waves. So we have a drop here, a little push up. This is a little bit of a choppy drop. Again, see how it doesn't make much progress? We had this first drop, and then it can't really make much of a lower low here. So buyer's pretty strong in this. Then we had this pop up, higher low here forming. So again, if we start breaking up above here, that would be the first potential entry. If conditions are good, we don't know if they're going to get good that quickly. It might take another couple days, in which case this stock could be already up here, and then we wait for the pullback and get into the long. The reason I kept this on the list, even though it is choppy, this isn't a great looking pattern, I would say. I mean, if we draw it in there, we can see it. But I wouldn't call this a beautiful pattern by any stretch, but this is very strong, just a bullet higher, and that's what we like to see, is this strong momentum pattern. Hopefully strong momentum follows it out. Braze, another one. Again, talking about things that I don't super like. This drifted a little bit. Then we had a bit of a pullback, so maybe this goes higher, but we didn't have super strong momentum coming into this pattern. So again, when I go through all of these on my own and decide which ones I'm going to put out orders in, this might be a little bit of a knock against it. We also have earnings coming out in a week. So this, while it's forming here, we do have a bit of a rounded bottom pattern, big drop followed by a little bit smaller drop that barely makes lower low. We're starting to push back up to these swing highs. If we get a nice move up and a pullback, maybe it's a consideration, but compared to the one we just looked at, CRC, really strong move up, then a pattern. This is more drift than pattern. Not one of my favorite types of patterns when that happens. I do prefer to see a stronger move up than the rounded bottom, because what comes into a pattern often comes out. So this could very easily just kind of keep chopping sideways. I mean, I don't know what the future is, but as a tendency, that tends to happen. So BRZ probably also would leave on the sidelines, or maybe not my favorite one out there. GCOS, more of a traditional type rounded bottom in that you have multiple lows. This was what I was talking about. With some of the other ones, you have only one or two drops. Here you have 1, 2, 3 drops, all barely making progress to the downside, and we're just starting to see that shift to the upside. You could include this one as well if you wanted, but really this is more what I was looking at. And we haven't quite pushed above this recent swing high yet, so we're just right on that cusp there, so which works out well. If we continue moving up, we're waiting for that next pullback, assuming it stays at a higher swing low, then we have the potential to go on. And this could come, that's just an example, it could come a little bit further back in there. We don't know, but that's the overall pattern and what I would be looking for in this one. FTI, another, what I would say isn't a beautiful pattern. It doesn't super fit a contraction. It doesn't super fit a rounded bottom. I did like this momentum we had coming in, but then we chopped around for quite a while here. And now we're starting to kind of tighten up and contract in. And maybe you could draw a little rounded bottom arc on this, or you could view it as a contraction because we have been decreasing volatility. But it's not great, and this concerns me a little bit. We've been chopping sideways for quite a while, so we had some chop coming into this area here where we're starting to tighten up a little bit. And yeah, so a little bit concerning. Overall decent momentum given some of the other trade candidates we have. If this really had a nice move up, maybe I would consider trading the pullback as a rounded bottom to basically this little area in here. But yeah, again, maybe another one. When I looked at it at first, it's like, okay, that kind of caught my eye. We had some nice momentum. It's tightening up, but I don't love it. And so again, this is just how you thin out the list. There's eyeballing it, maybe like 15 stocks on there, 12 stocks on there. So I've kind of eliminated at least 3 just by doing this video. And this is basically what I do when I go through this list, is just pick out little details and say, yeah, I don't really like that, I don't really like that, and then it gets filtered down to just maybe 2 or 3 that we put out orders in, and likely only one of them will trigger. So each kind of list I put out, I'm maybe trading a couple of stocks. Even if there's 15 on the list, I might actually end up trading 2. What's another one? CRS. Similar pattern we've seen in the others. Little drop, little drop, little drop. Can't make much progress to the upside, and we've had this nice shift up. So waiting for that first pullback that stays above this low, and then looking for the move up. Decent momentum, a little bit choppy, but we have this overall pretty good move. Again, like I said, a little choppy, but 30% or so. So if we got 30% coming out of this, that's overall a pretty good trade, especially if you can get like a 5% stop loss. We're not getting in right at the bottom, of course, so even if you have 15-20% upside for 5% stop loss, those would be the kind of trades we'd look at. Adobe. Similar type of thing, a little bit of chop coming in, and this is what I was looking at for the rounded bottom. So, we start to have these drops, little pushes higher. These drops can't get anywhere. So if you just look at this progression, a little bit lower lows, lower highs coming into here, and then we start to see higher highs, higher lows. So we're starting to see that push upwards. This had moved above these prior high levels, so this was a possible entry here if we use the 1 candle trigger, which is these were moving pretty quickly already, but we also have the option to wait for a consolidation, or in our case we're probably gonna have to wait for a move up and then followed by a pullback, and then catch this one on the next pullback. Really strong run coming into here. This last run up, a little bit weaker, something to be aware of. And then we have this pattern. So maybe some upside momentum left in this, but we do have a little bit of a warning sign that this has stalled out. But then we got the pullback, which is what this stalling out tells us. The stalling out says, hey, watch out, there might be a pullback. And so we got the pullback. We're starting to move up. So I really want to see this push up a little bit more, get that pullback. We do have earnings kind of middle of September, something to keep in the back of your mind. But overall, not too bad of a pattern. Vist, rounded bottom. Lots of choppiness in here. You can see like these wicks, just big whipsaws up and down during many of these days, or at least one day in there, so that's not too bad. Again, I'm analyzing these as I'm going through them. I just went through my list, see the ones that interest me, and then this video is basically to help you see what I'm looking at and break them down a little bit further. So we have pushed above these swing highs, so basically we're in the pullback, or potentially starting the pullback, which could give us an entry. And I also drew this. This is not a great trend channel because we've left lots of lows out, but it does show the overall area this stock has been moving. So I would use that as information, and we're kind of looking at maybe a target up in this area if we did get a trade entry. Just something to be aware of. So I wouldn't ignore this, the fact that the price has basically been channeling up, and put a target way up here. It may get there eventually, but we do have some information that this has been channeling. So same with on the other stocks. If you kind of notice that the price is moving in a relatively stable band, then use that information for your targets. And Clack, same situation that we had in a couple others. So I'm starting to see the rounded bottom here, so little drop, pullback, little drop, pushing into new highs, seeing that shift from moving down to moving up. and I'd like to see a little bit of a push up, then a pullback. Same issue we had on a couple other ones. We had basically moved sideways coming into this rounded bottom, a little bit of a push up on the earnings. So compared to some of the other ones with much higher momentum, is this my favorite? No, probably not. So again, maybe one I put on the back burner. It's really at the bottom of the list, I would say, in terms of ones I would be interested in. And so that's what you can do, is basically look at these, write down. What I usually end up doing is I write down 3 or 4 that I really like on a piece of paper, and those are the ones that I start really watching for the entries and for putting out orders, and the rest of them can just kind of get left, and I check back on them in several days or a week. Maybe something looks a little bit better. Maybe they had a big move up, starting to look better for the rounded bottom, momentum's coming back in or something like that. But a lot of times it's just I'm focusing on those 2 or 3, maybe 4 names on the list that I really like. Real quickly, the Canadian stocks. ERK, don't really know if we can count these early moves on zero volume, but even so, these are really big, moves out of here, 30%. So that's nice. So we had this rounded bottom here, pull back, starting to see this shift up. So these could have already been entry points in here, and basically waiting for that next pullback. What I would really like to see is a bit of a acceleration in the buying. We had this little push up, which kind of starts the progress. Then we had this higher swing low. It'd be nice to see this push up a little bit more than that last one. If this one increased close to 11%, maybe we see like a 15% move up, something that says, hey, we're increasing, or 13%, basically anything kind of more than this to show that buying enthusiasm increasing, push up, and we're waiting for that pullback. So a lot of these, again, because market conditions not super ideal at the moment, we're gonna let some of these entries have already occurred, let them play out, get in on the next pullback. And Argonaut Gold. So again, another one that basically took off from a possible entry point. Again, this one, beautiful pattern. No, a lot of choppiness coming in. This is what caught my eye when I originally was scanning. Little drops, trying to see this pop-ups. This was a possible entry point there as it moved above these prior highs. Big move to above higher swing highs, nice consolidation and a break higher. Would I trade this now? No, probably not. So I can eliminate that one from my list as well. Also, pretty choppy coming in here, getting more complex compared to some of those other ones we looked at where it's been a really strong move up and then we just start dropping a little bit and we're starting to move back up. Those are the trades I prefer, as opposed to choppiness coming into the pattern, because we just don't know what's going to come out. Sometimes we get a nice sharp move like this, but a lot of times, again, we're talking about tendencies. What we see most often, what comes into a pattern often comes out. So if we have choppiness coming into a pattern, more likely we'll get choppiness coming out. So that is your swing trading stock watch list for the week of August 29th. I hope that helps you out in seeing what I'm looking for and basically how I start planning out the trades. Write down a few that you're interested in and then start stocking those. Put those up on, if you have a screen that you keep open or something with some charts, which is what I do. I have a screen with about 8 open spots where I can put charts, and the ones that I'm interested in I put in there. That way, kind of every time my computer opens and I see that page, I can say, okay, yep, that's getting closer to my entry, and then I can start stocking and putting out my entries. So have a great trading week out there, and hopefully our market health indicators continue to improve and these trades continue to set up so that we can get some trades.